singular, but so many people are
That's the
willing
only
to
way I know
abdicate
how.
the singular and go for the plural. And so we're taught in civics class that in the plural, it's we the people who control the government. And it is a true statement in so much as we get what we tolerate, and if a sufficient number of people didn't want something, and they didn't want it badly enough, that it wouldn't occur.
We've got the monsters outnumbered 200 to 1, so if we were willing to take heavy casualties, we could bodily tear them limb from limb, but that's the only way to get rid of them.
All right. Perhaps that's so, but at the very least, I'd like to convince the American people, or at least the ones that are listening, that there is one thing that is going, at the very least, one thing that's going wrong, and that is plea bargains. So a plea bargain doesn't sound like an important thing. Why would I care about it? Well, justice has been something that we've wanted from our government for a very, very long time. Draco, for his draconian law, for as draconian his laws might have been, was the first to sort of write them down. I'm standing right now before an Egyptian picture of the afterlife, which has the scales of justice. If you're sufficiently bad, this creature eats your soul at the end of it all.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah. So that shows to me that justice is something that people have longed for a very long time and have demanded from their governments for a very long time. And we don't have anything that looks like it in the United States in the criminal justice system. And I'm going to tell you why. Because currently, far fewer, like somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.1% of cases. It might be 0.2 and it might be 0.3. I've looked and looked, and the numbers are very difficult to know because they don't report this stuff because they want you to know it. But let's say 99.7% of cases that are brought against people do not end up in a trial. There are some jurisdictions that have it in a criminal trial this year. And that happens over and over across the United States. And the reason for it is plea bargains. Because the prosecutor knows that this is a game they play every day. Mm-hmm. All they have to do to get you to plea to something is to sufficiently make the thing that the time you might face by getting a fair trial to make it bad. So if, for instance, they have you, what's something that Americans do all the time? You have some expired drugs in your cabinet, or maybe mom gave you a painkiller or something like that. So you get a possession of drug possession charge.
I eat mine when they're fresh.
That's fine. But let's say you have an expired pill in your medicine cabinet. You get a drug possession charge out of some strange thing. A lot of Americans are doing this right now. And that they got you on that charge. But the prosecutor brings all kinds of charges, dealing in heroin, and he charges you with stuff to the point that you could be facing 20 years. And then he comes to you and says, hey, look, plead guilty, and I'll give you probation, and we'll get this off our desk. Now, what are you going to do? You didn't really do anything wrong. And obviously, you can beat a heroin dealing charge, but he's going to charge you with a felony, so you'll never own a gun again. And you're obviously going to take it because only a fool would face 20 years when they have 6 months. And it doesn't even matter if you're guilty of it. It could have been your roommate's pill. But this is how it works.
Well, Mark, you're right in that it doesn't matter if you're guilty, but I think what a lot of people realize, and that you may be glossing over, is the fact that in a trial, you are trusting your fate, your future, to 12 strangers who more often than not are idiots. And if they're not idiots, then they probably believe their job is to convict, not to weigh the evidence and come to a rational decision. And even if they want,
I would say that would be kind of idiotic if that's what they believe, because that defeats the entire purpose of a jury.
I think there's a difference between stupid and, that. But even if all of that is not the case, right? Human beings are not rational. You're not feeding this information into a computer and saying, I want you to establish, 99.9% likelihood that this is what happened. You're feeding it to human beings who are flawed, emotional creatures, and they're going to make decisions from the moment they see a defendant. Their decision, more often than not, is made.
I wouldn't doubt that. I'd like
That's
to say
the fair trial
side.
that is the alternative. And I'm not saying either one is better than the other, but I'm saying this fair trial thing you're talking about isn't very good.
Well, the big violation.
This is one of the few places in the world that has a jury trial. Like most places do not do this. They'll give you 3 judges for a felony, maybe 5, and then you're judged based on the law. I'm not saying the chances are better, and I'm not saying it's better, but I'm saying that probably the number one problem with the American judicial system is the plea bargain. Because here's why. Mm-hmm. If there is, if somebody's guilty, isn't it a miscarriage of justice if they don't get a trial and get the sentence that they were supposed to get? I mean, bargaining with the prosecutor doesn't serve the public. This is a public servant bargaining away justice. Mm-hmm. And it seems like more often, many times when you hear it on the news, it's like, well, this guy that murdered 7 children is plea bargaining out to, something lesser. Well, who wants that? Mm-hmm. I suggest that if we all want more justice out of our justice system, that we do away with plea bargaining, period. Plea bargaining doesn't serve anybody but public servants getting paid to do their job and guilty people. Terribly guilty people, awful people. And what would happen is we'd have far fewer cases brought forward. The drug war would be completely under control because they wouldn't be able to handle the cases, and crimes of the victim would be prioritized.
So you're saying that if we were to abolish the plea deal process, they would be forced to drop more charges and instead?
Yeah, well, like we've always said, it would overflow the system. Mm-hmm. You missed the worst thing about plea bargains, though, which is there's a converse side to look at it. You might say that, and you did say that in a lot of people it involves guilty people getting a lighter decision than they deserve. But the flip side of that is a lot of times what you get on a plea bargain, I mean, that's a reasonable outcome from the state's point of view, but if you go to trial, they punish you further for executing, for demanding your right to free process, which is your right under the 8th Amendment. So they
sure did that to you.
So it's a violation of your constitutional rights.
We'll continue. Mark, I imagine you want to continue the discussion. The number is 603-283-6160.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20, mymagicmud.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, You are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with AgristHosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to AgristHosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's AgristHosting.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. The phones are open, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. You're ready to learn about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash? You can get on over to Bitcoin.com, and you can do that over there. They've got an excellent Get Started section. You just click Get Started at the top of the page, and you can learn the basics about important things like what is decentralization and why does it need to come to the world of money, and what makes Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and cryptocurrency so different from the money that has come before it. You can learn these things over at Bitcoin.com. Again, click Get Started at the top of the page. If you want to get your first cryptos, you can do that through Bitcoin.com. They got a ton of cool features over there. And then there's their news site. So if you are not brand new to crypto and you want to get the latest news headlines about crypto, get on over to news.bitcoin.com. Again, that is news.bitcoin.com. We got Mark Edge on the line here calling in about the frustration that you have experienced, Mark, about the plea deal process, and that you say plea deals shouldn't even exist because basically it gets people who are real criminals off easier sentences, and for people who are not actual criminals, who maybe have been falsely accused by the state, because they get stacked up with a bunch of charges and intimidated, they take a plea deal, and then in many cases they're pleading guilty to something they didn't even do. So that's kind of my summary here, but what else did you want to say?
Yeah, basically that is that innocent people are harmed and the public is harmed. The only people that benefit are government employees who don't have to do their jobs, pay them to do, and the terribly awful, guilty, evil people that are really getting beat. Now, I've got a lot to say about the criminal justice system.
I don't think that's a fair assessment, Mark.
Okay. All right.
I mean, there are certainly people out there who would be wrongfully convicted in a trial if they took a matter to trial, and then they would be facing, 10 years in prison instead of a year or whatever.
I wonder about that. Like on one hand, I sort of agree. So, for instance, what we know is that people who are found guilty, felons are found guilty at trial at about 60% rate. And what that suggests to me is that anybody who is willing to take their case to trial is either terribly guilty or innocent, like full-on innocent. If you're willing to take a case to trial and keep turning down plea bargain after plea bargain from these people who do not want to do their jobs, apparently, then you likely are innocent. And so the idea that we're finding people not guilty, or excuse me, we're finding them guilty at a rate of 66% in felon cases, suggests to me that juries are completely unqualified to do their jobs.
Well, certainly, but I don't know how you can see a correlation between a person's willingness to take a matter to trial while at the same time admitting that, what the prosecutors do is they stack charges against people and intimidate them into accepting a plea deal. So it's not a matter of being guilty or not guilty. It's a matter of being intimidated or not intimidated.
That's what it comes to taking the plea bargain, right? Plea bargains intimidate people, innocent people, or people that would win at trial, or people that are not worth convicting into taking plea bargains. And the reason we have a prison industrial complex in the United States is because we do this on an industrial scale. I don't know of any country that does a plea bargain the way the United States does. But this is why our prisons are stacked full of people, and why the best estimates that are given is that 15% of people who are in prison right now are completely innocent. And a lot
half
of
the rest of them don't belong there anyway, because whatever it is they're guilty of was never a crime to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. The drug wars would be another step that I would take, but at this point, I'm talking about plea bargains. And I think that without plea bargains and getting rid of the drug war, the American criminal justice system would make a lot more sense.
No doubt. Well, they're not going to change that anytime soon.
No, well, because no one will stand up and say anything, sadly, and not enough people will. It just doesn't matter. If you're not the one being charged, then it doesn't matter to you. And at this point, Americans are getting the government they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
One that doesn't listen to anything they have to say because they won't say anything forcefully enough.
It's frustrating. Well, I imagine that's one of the reasons why you are moving to Honduras.
It is one of the reasons I'm moving to Honduras. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons I'm moving to a Zede inside of Honduras.
Are they more likely to stand up to the government in Honduras? Because that's definitely got a spotty record of success in South America.
I don't imagine their government, they consider their government to be terribly effective in Honduras. They put their hands out hoping for something free and not getting it.
Yeah, I think the government of the Honduras
are very dedicated.
I think the government of Honduras is smaller and just tends to leave people alone.
What's that?
I suspect the government of the Honduras is smaller and tends to leave people alone.
I mean, it certainly collects tax.
Sure.
And that sort of thing.
I think that they're more likely to leave a rich gringo alone, but they are not known for likely leaving their own people alone. That's why there's an S-ton of people that want to escape from there and move to the United States. Have you heard of the caravans?
It mostly has to do with poverty and ineffectiveness of government. The reason
why there's poverty is because the state is taking so much from people and preventing them from creating wealth for themselves.
That's
in many
part
cases,
of it, but there's
it
more
has to do with
it.
licensure.
So that it would be preventing them from creating wealth for themselves. If they're not going to issue a license, that is by definition the state preventing them from doing better.
Also, the state gets involved in minimum wage and employer relations, and basically makes it so people don't want to hire in Honduras.
Mm-hmm.
There are some steps in the place. There's the maquilas, the Zedes. There's a few different things that have been done in order to prevent the government getting involved in this way. But, they got their versions of Democrats and Republicans arguing about this stuff, too. I don't look to Honduras to solve problems. I look to the Zede as a solution, and perhaps...
And what, for our listeners that are new to the show, what is a Zede?
ZEDE is a special autonomous zone in Honduras where one can set up their own civil court, their own police, their own court system, civil law, court system, and police, and a variety of other things too. They're duty-free as far as export and import goes, and a bunch of tax benefits and these sorts of things.
Honduras was just in the crypto news for the ZEDE on the island of Roatan that is apparently making Bitcoin their legal tender.
That's true. In fact, the legal tender crypto is most major cryptos are legal tender in the other ZEDE, Morazan.city too, but they don't seem to get the press.
Excellent. Mark, anything else you want to share tonight?
No, that'll do it.
Thanks
guys.
for the call. Appreciate it. If you want to weigh in on plea deals or ZEDEs or whatever's on your mind, you can take control of the airwaves here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Maybe we'll talk about magic mushrooms on the way here tonight. Are they going to be legalized in the same path that marijuana has been following? It's Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off, now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nina Maria Potts with the latest world news. Ukraine faces a crucial test as Russian forces regroup and redeploy, according to Western officials, sounding the alarm that a major new offensive is underway. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that tens of thousands of people have probably died during Russia's attack on the port city of Mariupol. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has held high-level talks with its Indian counterparts in a bid to find common ground over Russia, with India coming under mounting pressure to denounce the Russian war in Ukraine. US President Joe Biden has pushed Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to support the US response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine during talks on Monday. During the hour-long call described by the US as warm and candid, President Biden said it was not in India's interest to increase oil imports from Russia, but he stopped short of making any specific demands. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Prime Minister Modi said, we are the world's two largest, oldest democracies, and so we are natural partners. And of course, President Biden needs India on side as a counterweight in the region against the influence of China. But the problem lies in the fact that as far as the conflict in Ukraine and the treatment of Russia goes, the US is not pleased with the way India has been dealing with that. And so there will be questions in this meeting from the US side about why India continues to abstain from votes against Russia in the UN General Assembly, the most recent one being the suspension of Russia from the UN Human Rights Council, why it continues to buy oil, 3 billion barrels of Russian crude, and also why it is buying Russian air defense S-400s.
The UN has warned that nearly 2/3 of Ukrainian children have been forced from their homes by the fighting with Russia. Members of the Security Council were also told that women in the country are increasingly being targeted with rape and sexual violence. Sarah Walton reports.
The UN Security Council met on Monday to discuss the situation in Ukraine with a focus on how the conflict's impacting women and children. UNICEF says at least 142 children have been confirmed killed, but that the true figure is much higher. The Security Council also heard from Katerina Cherepaka, the head of a Ukrainian charity which supports the victims of trafficking and sexual assault. She said her organisation had recorded incidents of women being subjected to rape by Russian soldiers, while the US ambassador to the UN said they'd received reports of Ukrainian girls cutting their hair to look like boys in order to avoid being raped. Russia's ambassador to the UN said Western countries were using disinformation to distort his country's actions in Ukraine and that no convincing evidence had been presented for any of the crimes blamed on Russian forces. Sarah Walton, New York.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We have all kinds of options for you to get interactive online with Free Talk Live, including our social media platform. You can go to social.freetalklive.com and create an account there. It's a Mastodon-based system, which means that it's open source. It means that it is self-hosted, and that means we're running the server, not some big tech mega corporation like Twitter. In fact, I know that you wanted to give us a Elon Musk Twitter drama update on the way here, Ari, and it's an interesting update. We'll get into that coming up. But for those of you that actually want to have more freedom to speak on social media, just go to social.freetalklive.com, and you can do that there. We're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts. And then on the way, maybe we'll talk about the Twitter update there, and also marijuana and psilocybin mushrooms. But first, David I don't know if I should say his last name. The caller ID. I have a new feature on our phone system that I turned on today that I found that sort of auto-populates caller ID info. So I'm going to have to get used to not saying people's last names. David, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
No worries. Hey, how's it going, y'all?
What's on your mind?
So I just wanted to ask, do you know who Tom Woods is?
Sure. For our listeners that don't know, who is he?
So Tom Woods, he's, I guess, a quote-unquote influencer in the libertarian sphere. He's been around forever, written a bunch of books. He's got a podcast. Personally, he's sort of kind of been, an inspiration to me. Mm-hmm. Sort of kind of introduced me, among others, to the ideas of liberty.
Yeah, he's definitely a great communicator of the ideas of liberty. His podcast is quite popular. He's one of the few libertarian podcasters, and there are dozens of libertarian podcasters, but he's one of the few that actually does a show, I think, 5 days a week. So there aren't very many that are in that particular category, and he's one of them.
Yeah. I think he's a great guy, but evidently he's been involved in some controversy of late, and sort of kind of want to know if you heard about it and what you thought. It's come to light that I guess his first wife and he started dating when he was 26 and she was 15, right? And this has got people's panties in a wad. I don't know. It seems to be accurate, but have you all heard about that? And if so,
how many decades ago was that?
This is, I believe, in the late 1990s, so 20 plus years ago.
I'm aware of it to a degree, but I live here in New Hampshire where libertarians generally have better things to do than argue with one another online. It's just more online libertarian drama, big L Libertarian Party nonsense that, this is the kind of crap that's holding the Libertarian Party back. They're constantly fighting over nonsensical garbage like this. Does it matter what Tom Woods did 30 years ago? Why are people fixated on that? Why aren't they going out there trying to achieve liberty in our lifetime? Instead, let's pick a fight with one of the most popular libertarian influencers in the world instead of doing anything productive.
Yeah, the amount of energy that people spend, and it's not just Tom Woods. It's there's some drama of the week every single week. Didn't you guys used to do a libertarian drama of the week?
We did.
Your show, what was it?
Call to Freedom.
Yeah, Call to Freedom. Thank you.
We had a libertarian drama of the week,
and usually there's more than one to choose from.
Yeah, usually we would have multiple ones to go through. I mean, it's common for libertarians. I don't know. My theory is that it's like starving puppies, right? A well-fed, happy puppy doesn't fight with its brothers and sisters, but if you have like 5 or 6 starving puppies and you throw just a little bit of food out there, they're going to fight to the death over it. And the Libertarian Party just has that tiny little scrap of food that is the 1% or 2% of the national vote they get, and they will fight each other to the death for that.
That's always been the common wisdom about academic politics, which are also particularly nasty. They say the politics are so nasty because the stakes are so low.
That seems to be the case with the
LP. You mean like at a college or something?
Yeah.
Okay. So, David, regarding the issue, quote unquote, I don't really even see what the issue is. From
I don't care if he was sleeping with her when she was 15. It's not my business.
Well, and from what I've seen, it isn't even the lady who is bringing this forward. It's her sister. So everybody's touting what her sister has to say as though it means something. It's like, well,
what does the lady have to say?
If the lady wants to come out and say she was somehow taken advantage of or whatever, then that would be a completely different story. But regardless, it seems to me like you've got 2 people consenting to be together. These people got married, from what I understand, when she turned 18.
Yeah, that's right. They got engaged when she was 18, got married when she was 19, had some kids. I think they're divorced now, but I mean, it's not like I'm really keeping up with his love life, but that's my understanding. I mean, yeah, I don't see what the big deal is, right?
I don't either. It's just that some people love to, kill a sacred cow. They love to target people who are these heroes to some and try to take them down a notch, and they get a real, they get pleasure out of that, I think. And that's
it's
what's
also
going on
an
here.
opportunity for virtue signaling.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They live for those 70 likes they get on Facebook when they, ramble on lengthy tirades about Tom Woods and how they condemn this sort of predatory behavior. And I'm like, dude, you're on the same platform as people just posting nonsense. Okay, calm down.
Yeah, people are calling him a quote unquote groomer, and it's just like, look.
She was 15 at the time.
Yeah, but supposedly, I've seen some of the details, supposedly they didn't even meet until she was 16. But regardless, we're still talking about a teenage human being here. This is not a child. I understand that the people people just cannot make a distinction between children and teenagers, but there is a distinction. Teenagers are going through and or have gone through puberty. They are physically and in many cases mentally interested in having adult relationships, and should be free to make those choices if they want to. And I can't understand how libertarians can think any other way, can believe in the individual, supposedly, right? That's what libertarians believe in, is individual, volition and freedom to choose. But then say, oh, no, she wasn't the government's age, so therefore she's a child. And it's just so insulting to somebody who is that age, somebody who's 15, 16, 17 years old. It's such an insult to them to say, oh, no, sweetie, you can't make a choice for yourself.
I mean, I'll give it to them that 15, you're really starting to push the line at that point, right?
No doubt. The younger somebody gets, then you could make an argument that they might be being taken advantage of or whatever. But if that person's not saying they were taken advantage of, then I have no reason to believe anything about that. So, David, anything else you want to share?
Yeah, it just seems like a smear piece by her sister. I don't know what kind of grudge they have, but yeah, I was just wondering what your hot take was. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, people should be free to make choices, even young people, and sometimes that's the wrong choice. And again, to my knowledge, this woman is not saying it was the wrong choice. They've got kids together. They clearly had a good enough relationship to have more than one child, right? Like, if you screwed up and you were with somebody who was abusive or for some reason the relationship was terrible, would you really go ahead and have a second child with that person? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. These are like, isn't he a Catholic? Isn't Tom Woods?
I don't know, but I will say that people in abusive relationships make way dumber decisions than, I'm going to have a second child with this person. That's not unheard of. But
isn't he a Catholic?
I don't know. But nothing I've ever seen from him suggests that he's abusive.
Do you know, David? Do you know what his religion is?
I think he is a Catholic.
Yeah. I mean, so, I don't know how depraved of a sexual relationship these people are having, but I suspect it's fairly vanilla. And, these guys, they're a religious family. He's a religious man. What's the big deal here? They got married with the permission of her parents, from what I understand, and everything was okay. Somebody's got a grudge that they're holding, and it's not, from what I understand, the woman in question. And you know what?
That's not surprising, though.
Even if it was her, again, you made your choices. You were a teenager. You could make that choice. You can make a choice to do a lot of things as a teenager. Thank you for the call, David. I appreciate hearing from you. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever's on your mind here. This is Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after PorcFest, but ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. You can bring up whatever is on your mind here. The number is 603-283-6160. It was announced last week that Elon Musk had purchased over 9% of Twitter, and then they offered him a seat on the board. There's been a development in that situation, and Aria's got the story. We're going to get into it on the way. Again, the number here is 603-283-6160. You can join us online, of course, over at freetalklive.com and enjoy the features that we have for you there over, once again, it's freetalklive.com. You can download archives that go back for years for free. Let's go to your phone calls and thoughts, though. We got Brad on the line in Michigan. Brad. Or Bradley.
Hi, I'm just calling about the last caller's topic about the Tom Woods controversy.
Sure.
Yeah, basically, I have some personal experience with this type of issue. I ended up going to prison for 40 months.
Sorry to hear that.
Because, yeah, when I was 20, I was involved with a 15-year-old.
That's a stupid reason to send someone to prison for more than 3 years.
Yeah, and it's a really unjust system that we have, because I have to register on the sex offender registry for 25 years, and even though I hold I have a college degree, and I still have a really hard time getting a job, like at a gas station, for example.
Amazing. So,
But,
I don't know how much you want to tell us about that situation. Was this person consenting, but parents found out and called the cops, or how did you end up behind bars?
Well, I don't know how it, came about, but yeah, they were definitely consenting, because as a libertarian, I would never, violate the non-aggression principle like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, that like cancel culture, right? Like sex offender stuff is the worst thing in society, according, I don't know how to explain it, but
yeah, that's a vicious label, right? To have to, because at that point you're on lists. There are apps that can monitor you. People can pull them up. I've never experimented with one of these, but I've heard that there are apps where you can pull up and you can see all of the sex offenders in your area or whatever.
Yeah.
Some of these people are just people like you.
And you don't get to explain yourself. You don't get the chance to say, oh, well, no, this was no big deal. It was totally consensual. All they do is they see, oh, this person was convicted for sexual assault on a minor? Well, he must be raping children. And I don't know what the exact charge was that you ended up going. Was it something like that?
Yeah, basically. And, it's just really ridiculous, because even in the liberty movement, I suffer problems. Like the Libertarian Party, a while back, they made a big stink about it. And then more recently, Young Americans for Liberty actually tried canceling me with a job offer. It's ridiculous. Like Tom Woods, he is, really, really persuasive when it comes to getting people motivated to stand up to the cancel culture and all that stuff.
Yep.
But even libertarians are doing that.
Sure, it's going on right in within this movement, and it's so sad.
How long ago was that this happened to you?
2016.
Okay.
So not too long ago. It's fairly recent.
It's still horrible. I'm just curious. And like, if this had been in the 90s or something, I would be shocked to find. Actually, I guess in hindsight, I wouldn't be shocked to find libertarians still holding against you, because they're still trying to do that with Tom Woods right now.
So did you take a plea, Brad?
Yeah, I did. Because if I wouldn't have, I would have got 9 years in prison.
Wow. Presuming you were found guilty, and the girl was she willing to testify?
I don't know, but they would have found me guilty, because they always find you guilty.
Not always.
There have been a few times recently where they haven't, but probably not in those types of cases.
Didn't all of the Whitmer kidnappers get found not guilty?
2 of the 4 people in the Whitmer case, that's the governor of Michigan, they were found not guilty. The other 2 were hung juries, so they couldn't come to a decision. And there were 2 others who took a guilty plea, so they're going to prison in that particular case.
The thing I regret the most about this whole situation is I spent $7,000 on a lawyer.
Oh, geez.
If I would have bought Bitcoin, I'd be a millionaire today.
Damn. That would have been a nice thing to come out of prison, too.
Yeah, I would have.
All right.
I missed most of the increases because of prison.
Oh, that's a downer. Bradley, anything else you want to share tonight?
No, that's it. I just want to share that.
I mean, you've only missed the increases if they're over, right? And I don't think Bitcoin is plummet. I don't think it's staying at 40,000 or whatever it's at right now.
Yeah, it dropped below 40,000 today, 39,000.
Yeah, I think, $1 million Bitcoin is inevitable at some point.
Well, I bought before it was 20,000 at least.
That's good.
Thank you, Bradley.
So,
I
yeah.
appreciate your call tonight, man, and thanks for sharing your story. I know that's not an easy thing to do. Let's go to Bad Slave calling us from New Hampshire. Bad Slave, you're on Free Talk Live.
Howdy, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to say real quickly about Tom Woods. I know him personally. He is not a groomer. He is a decent guy. His first wife was the oldest of 16 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she had every reason to be a very mature young woman when he met her, and I'm just thinking this is just bull crap, to be honest with you.
Yep, they're just trying to drag somebody through the mud for just because.
Yeah, well, and Tom's a great guy. If you go out and destroy all these people that are just great liberty people, what are we gonna do? I mean, it's crazy.
That's what online libertarians do, though. That's all they do.
They eat their own.
Yeah.
I'm an online libertarian, and I'm not doing it.
No, I think what she means by that is she's talking about people who have not moved to New Hampshire and have actually people who are not busy doing any real activism, because if you actually were busy, then you wouldn't find yourself bogged down in all of this online drama constantly. The people in New Hampshire, you don't see them. That's not to say it hasn't happened or wouldn't happen in New Hampshire. They did fight over the Libertarian Party last year or something like that.
Man, from what I can tell, that's mostly new movers who haven't adjusted to the reality that here in New Hampshire we all get along with each other. Right.
Well, I mean, yes and no. Not everybody likes everybody. When you've got thousands of people here, there's going to be some people that don't get along.
Liking someone and not getting in their way. Rather, we don't get in each other's way here as we're working toward liberty.
Ultimately, it usually shakes out where the worst characters that move here usually leave.
Yeah.
So, but Bad Slave, what else?
I wanted to bring up this Zeta thing with
ZA,
Mark.
The Special Economic Zone.
ZA, whatever. I don't care. I think, I asked him earlier if he had actually looked into, creating a ZA in New Hampshire. Why the heck not? And I just,
I'm right there with you. I've been saying that for years.
What's that?
I'm right there with you. I've been saying that for years, that we should push for that.
I mean, just do it. Just be on it and do it. There can't be a worse situation than in Honduras. I mean, really.
I think with the United States, you're going to have to negotiate with two separate governments, the United States government and the state of New Hampshire. And both of them have a history. Well, I don't know about the state of New Hampshire, but the U.S. government, they don't have a good history of keeping their agreements with special economic zones. Just look to the Native Americans.
The thing about the federal government, and we can do something about that, and that's called nullification. If we, activate nullification, and I don't see where Mark was ever on that, and here he is advertising to pull people away, from the Free State Project and the Liberty Movement that's going on here.
Well, I really wouldn't worry so much about it, Bad Slave, because ultimately the ZA concept in Honduras or other countries, it's not just a Honduras thing. There's, supposedly thousands of these things all around the planet. This concept is only going to attract a certain type of person, somebody who can work remotely, somebody with the wealth to be able to migrate to another place on the planet, which is not necessarily an easy thing to do. And he's starting from zero. He's starting from zero. The Free State Project is, a 20-year-old movement at this point. So we've got thousands.
Just getting cute.
Yeah.
Somebody that's willing.
We seem to have lost you, Bad Slave.
Bad connection there. Appreciate hearing from you. I mean, we can continue to discuss it here on the way, though. I do understand where he's coming from. He feels like Mark is turning against the Free State Project and the migration here to New Hampshire. And you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong with a little bit of competition. We'll see if Mark can make it happen because everyone else has failed. It's Free Talk Live. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nina Maria Potts with the latest world news. Ukraine faces a crucial test as Russian forces regroup and redeploy, according to Western officials, sounding the alarm that a major new offensive is underway. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that tens of thousands of people have probably died during Russia's attack on the port city of Mariupol. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has held high-level talks with its Indian counterparts in a bid to find common ground over Russia, with India coming under mounting pressure to denounce the Russian war in Ukraine. US President Joe Biden has pushed Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to support the US response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine during talks on Monday. During the hour-long call described by the US as warm and candid, President Biden said it was not in India's interest to increase oil imports from Russia, but he stopped short of making any specific demands. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Prime Minister Modi said, we are the world's 2 largest, oldest democracies, and so we are natural partners. And of course, President Biden needs India on side as a counterweight in the region against the influence of China. But the problem lies in the fact that as far as the conflict in Ukraine and the treatment of Russia goes, the US is not pleased with the way India has been dealing with that. And so there will be questions in this meeting from the US side about why India continues to abstain from votes against Russia in the UN General Assembly, the most recent one being the suspension of Russia from the UN Human Rights Council, why it continues to buy oil, 3 billion barrels of Russian crude, and also why it is buying Russian air defense S-400s.
The UN has warned that nearly 2/3 of Ukrainian children have been forced from their homes by the fighting with Russia. Members of the Security Council were also told that women in the country are increasingly being targeted with rape and sexual violence. Sarah Walton reports.
The UN Security Council met on Monday to discuss the situation in Ukraine with a focus on how the conflict's impacting women and children. UNICEF says at least 142 children have been confirmed killed, but that the true figure is much higher. The Security Council also heard from Katerina Cherepaka, the head of a Ukrainian charity which supports the victims of trafficking and sexual assault. She said her organisation had recorded incidents of women being subjected to rape by Russian soldiers, while the US ambassador to the UN said they'd received reports of Ukrainian girls cutting their hair to look like boys in order to avoid being raped. Russia's ambassador to the UN said Western countries were using disinformation to distort his country's actions in Ukraine and that no convincing evidence had been presented for any of the crimes blamed on Russian forces. Sarah Walton, New York.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. We're going to catch up today with Inna Sovsun, a Ukrainian lawmaker from whom we've heard before about the crisis in her country. Today, her view on why the Russians launched their horrific attack on Friday against a crowded railway station in eastern Ukraine. After all, Moscow claims it's trying to protect civilians in the separatist eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. So why launch an indiscriminate attack against people trying to evacuate the area?
They are doing that precisely for one reason, because it is children and women who are trying to evacuate. I think that what they're doing now is they're trying to scare people into not leaving, because they need civilians in the territories that they plan to capture. Again, a big issue whether they would be able to do that. I hope Ukrainian army will stand still. But I believe there are two reasons for that. First of all, they're using civilians as a shield. They're using them as hostages. But second, even if they manage to get control over the territory, and if there are no civilians left there, that would be a pretty hard sell, even to a brainwashed Russian audience. Like, we have been protecting people of Donbass, but all of them left when we actually came into control of the territory. That would be a really tough sell.
She says life in Kiev is returning to some semblance of normalcy now the Russians have withdrawn from the area around the capital. But that only intensifies concerns of a new offensive in the east. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And a reminder now of the hour's top stories. Ukraine faces a crucial test as Russian forces regroup and redeploy, according to Western officials, sounding the alarm that a major new offensive is getting underway. And the UN has warned that nearly 2/3 of Ukrainian children have been forced from their homes by the fighting with Russia. And that's the latest from Feature Story News. I'm Nina Maria Potts reporting.
Regarded by many as one of the fastest rising online personalities today, social media rock star Ryan Wasserman has 250,000 loyal Twitter followers and earns $28,000 a year at his job as an administrative assistant. The Onion spoke to the online luminary at KPL Insurance, where he works from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and makes roughly $13 an hour.
I'm just trying to bring my unique perspective to everybody. That's what my followers expect, and I like to think I deliver.
Wasserman, who currently has $900 in his checking account, regularly engages in conversations with high-profile celebrities and takes the bus to work from the 2-bedroom apartment he shares with a 23-year-old he met on Craigslist.
Actually, I just started a Tumblr because sometimes 140 characters just doesn't cut it. I just had a Google Glass tweet that Questlove retweeted again. KPL, this is Ryan. Yeah, I'm sorry, I totally forgot.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the second hour of the program. Coming up, Elon Musk not going to be joining the board of Twitter. We can also talk about psychedelic mushrooms and more, whatever, of course, is on your mind. You can join the show at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Actually, we haven't even gotten to any show prep. It's been callers so far tonight, which is refreshing.
I'm actually sort of surprised that the Tom Woods stuff hasn't brought out more callers, but I mean, it's still early in the show.
Well, there's one on hold actually right now that we're going to get to here in moments. But with you tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Aria.
We go to Thomas on the line in Indiana. You're on Free Talk Live. Thomas.
Hey, guys. It's good to talk to you. I hear you guys, standing up for Tom Woods and stuff, which I'm glad to hear that. But sadly, I've heard Free Talk Live over the last year or so start to give in on that a little bit to that statutory rape BS. I mean,
give in on what?
The whole statutory rape, sexual misconduct. They're giving in to the. Seems like I hear them. You guys, not so much you, Ian, but I hear others badmouth Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and everything they're accused of is all to do with teenagers. But they call them like they're pedophiles.
I have not heard that from hosts on this particular show, and I'm on 6 out of 7 nights per week. So, I mean, the situation, though, there was quite different than a Tom Woods relationship with a teenager.
Epstein was involved in a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely were putting those young women in quite a different situation, although I will still not take away their ability to consent, and I have always questioned...
we said that then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've always questioned the fact that these girls kept going back for more money.
Right. And that they were paid, and they were at least, teenagers, older teenagers to boot, and totally consented, but yet I hear him called like he's a chomo or child molester nonstop without question. And
I don't think you've heard that on this show.
No, not from you, Ian, at least. But,
well, I'm on the show 6 nights out of the week, so I would have remembered hearing something like that from one of my co-hosts.
I mean, there's plenty of negative stuff to say about Jeffrey Epstein, but
yeah, he hung with politicians. That's about the worst thing.
That's a terrible thing.
That, and he apparently had a blackmail habit, which, may be one of the big reasons that every time Israel wants our government to do something, it does.
Yeah, that was the suggestion, was that he was working for the
Mossad.
Israelis, right? Yeah. All right, Thomas, anything else you want to share?
I just wanted to comment on that. It just seems like everybody, just calls him a child molester, no questions. But even the people putting the charges against him and all that, I haven't seen any evidence of any actual children being victimized.
No, I had not heard anything about that either, and they certainly didn't bring anyone to to testify to that end. The girl that was going after him was, I believe, 17 at the time when she was in his employ. The one that got photographed with Prince Andrew, that one.
That's the age most of the so-called underage ones were.
Yeah, I mean, they did get younger, but again, they were always teenagers from what the reports that I saw. Thank you, Thomas, for the call tonight. The number is 603-283-6160.
I mean, it really goes back to what you were saying about Tom Woods, is that there's this huge desire among people, especially in the United States, apparently, to treat anyone under the age of 18 as though they're a 5-year-old.
And that's insulting.
It is.
To somebody under the age of 18.
I was living on my own at the age of 16.
Mm-hmm.
More than capable of making my own decisions. But according to these people, no, I might as well have been wearing diapers.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, their inability to recognize any distinction between a 17-year-old and a 7-year-old is terrifying.
Unfortunately, that appears to be what laws do to people. I mean, it's just absolutely ludicrous. But regardless, we go on with your calls and thoughts. Sarah in New Mexico, you're on Free Talk Live. Sarah.
So our governor is going to reduce the rail runner train service 75% until month of July, end of July.
What is the rail runner train service?
Yeah, so it's a train ride that goes from Santa Fe all the way down to Las Lunas, I believe.
Okay.
And so
they're reducing the amount of trains that are running, or the amount of time that the trains are running?
No, the price. They're trying to give the customers a break. So
taxpayers are going to subsidize it, then, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, people that are working to go on the train to go work a job in Santa Fe, and people that live in Santa Fe that work in Albuquerque are going to get that benefit.
And people who never saw the train, never rode the train, will get to pay for it.
Yeah, but then we get to pay for
Isn't that nice for them? Isn't that nice for them?
Yeah,
they get to jack their money for a train they never saw. Then they can't afford to get on the train they can get on.
Well, I mean, but it's our governor that's doing it. So, people are riding the train because they can, it's the gas prices. You know what I mean? Because they're on the train because they cannot afford the gas prices.
Right, so you just don't care about...
Could have cut taxes on the gas.
So nobody made a point, Sarah, and you completely ignored it, as you tend to do. And his point was that everyone in New Mexico is being forced to pay for a train that most of them will never ride, and you're totally fine with that, right?
Well, you mean New Hampshire?
No, New Mexico.
New Mexico,
That's
where
you live.
are.
Well, yeah, it's about community. It's to contribute
Really?
and to share.
Well, why
with
don't you
people
send me
that are-
$100 for no reason? Because it's about community. I should jack your stuff because it's about community.
If it were really about community, Sarah, here's the thing. If it were really about community, then the train, and we know Sarah loves a choo-choo, the choo-choo would have been funded voluntarily by the people in the community. They would have come together and done fundraising and given, a big Kickstarter benefits or whatever it is they would have done. And they would have laid the track through voluntary means, and the whole thing would run and it would make a profit. But it can't do that because people just don't care. And so the few politicos that are interested in trains, they passed this program and they forced it down everybody's throats.
Yeah. If you want to live in a decent community, don't force everybody to pay for what you want.
Thank you for the call tonight, Sarah. She doesn't care about decency, though. She's a communist. By the way, there was somebody who was pushing a train, a government train.
Pushing
here.
a train? That's hard.
They're pushing the idea of the train here in New Hampshire that would go from Manchester to Boston. And luckily, I believe the good people of New Hampshire said, no, we are not interested in that.
Whoever had that idea should go from Manchester to Boston.
And stay there.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's not, as I understand it, that idea is not coming to fruition here because thankfully the people that run the governments, which all governments are bad, but the New Hampshire government is less bad than the one in New Mexico. They're just much more frugal here in general, and they're just not likely to say yes to spending like that.
Well, thank goodness, right? Because we don't need a train to take the commute that, thousands upon thousands of people are taking every single day without issue.
What do you mean?
I mean, thousands of people are driving from Manchester to Boston every single day. They don't need a train to do it. They already have vehicles. And I realize that communists like Sarah hate that idea of people having their own vehicles.
Individuals.
Yeah, how horrible. But these people can go anywhere they want, whenever they want.
Hey, if they thought they'd be better off on a train, they could invest in a train company.
Yep. And buy the land to lay the track and try to make some money off of it. Or just charge only enough to cover the cost of repairs. I mean, whatever. Make it a nonprofit. I don't care as long as it's done voluntarily. But how many how many of these train projects out there have actually been done voluntarily since, the 1800s?
I suspect none.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of land to have to buy. And it's a weird portion of land to buy as well. It's like, I need this 6-foot wide strip for the next 45 miles.
The number tonight, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. Elon Musk could do it, though. I bet if he wanted to make a choo-choo, he could do that. He's got a few
I'd rather
billion.
have him getting us off the planet.
Yeah, there's more on the way here. We'll talk about Musk and the latest from his buy of Twitter coming up.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
The Shire Free Church offers a sanctuary to those seeking an escape from state churches.
The Shire Free Church is an interfaith, diverse group of people that may not share identical theological beliefs. As a member in or minister of the Shire Free Church, you are a sovereign individual and may be the faith of your choice.
We don't claim to have all of the answers.
We are open to all peaceful people.
We want to learn from each other.
What unifies the Shire Free Church and its diverse members is peace,
love, and liberty. There are many paths to God, one for every individual.
The Shire Free Church does not define a specific path beyond those parameters that must be your foundation.
Peace as your way,
love as your guide,
and liberty as your light.
Learn more at church.shiresociety.com.
That's church.shiresociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones open. You can join us here at 603-283-6160. Joining you in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Aria.
You can join us online anytime you want over at freetalklive.com and enjoy the features waiting for you there. We do have a Matrix chat server, which is an open source federated chat system, meaning you can connect with other people on other Matrix servers. It's a pretty cool system and it's free to use, so head over to chat.freetalklive.com. You can get the step-by-step instructions as to how to get on the server. It does take a few hoops to jump through, but then once you're connected, it's really easy to use. Chat.freetalklive.com. As we go back to the phones, to your calls and thoughts, we'll get into Elon Musk and Twitter here in moments. But first, Dan is on the line in Nebraska. You're on Free Talk Live. Dan.
Hey, you guys.
Hey, Dan.
So I just heard you guys talking about trains with Sarah, and
yeah.
I actually, if you could have guessed him, I am pretty sympathetic to Sarah's position.
Shocking.
But I feel like maybe she didn't explain it very well.
Would you describe yourself as a communist, Dan?
So the way I would describe myself is somewhere between a social democrat and a neoliberal. So you know that my foreign policy beliefs are neoliberal.
Are those just newer words to describe a communist?
No. I believe in stuff like the values of neoliberalism would be stuff like, free trade, also capitalism, but regulated capitalism, evidence-based policy. It's the idea of the taco truck on every corner, getting the best out of liberalism and progressivism.
So you believe in free trade. All right, let's go on and hear why you think, if you can believe in free trade, why you want to have a government-funded choo-choo.
So I think that, well, look, and the thing is I'm not hugely into either side on that, but what it is that, the cars themselves, I don't think are the future, and I don't think that it's good that we've built our society so much around cars, because the thing is we had a choice at one time to either build our society around trains or cars, and now that the cars have won out, everybody is, de facto forced to get a car.
We actually didn't have a choice.
To pay to have insured, inspected, and pay for your own gas. Like, when for many people, if we got ahead of the game, they could have been spared all this huge tax on people, which is to have your own vehicle if you want to live in a state like Nebraska.
Okay, there's a few things to unpack
hold on,
here.
he wanted to jump in.
The first thing that I would say to you is we actually didn't have a choice. That choice was taken away from us by the government, and they made the decision to rob us blind and then use that money to build a huge interstate highway system. So that wasn't something the American people chose. That was something that bureaucrats chose for them, and if they didn't want to pay for it, they put them in prison. So it may well have been a bad idea. Certainly there are problems with it, but usually when government takes people's freedom from them and forces solutions on them, those solutions don't end up being the best thing for the people.
I will also point out that trains only go where their tracks can take them.
Mm-hmm.
So vehicles have an automatic benefit in that there are more roads than there are train tracks everywhere. And maybe that would be different, right? If the automobile had maybe there would be train tracks everywhere.
Without the government, we wouldn't need roads. We'd be hovering.
That's also true, right? Like we would have flying cars if it wasn't for the government.
Yep, no doubt about it. So Dan, what is it that you're getting to here?
Well, what I'm getting to is that, look, I think that there's a growing demand, I think, for public transportation and in anti-car sentiment amongst Americans, because I think that now retrospectively, a lot of us, we want things to kind of go differently from here on out. And that's why I suppose I'm saying I'm sympathetic to Sarah's wanting to keep the trains going in New Mexico, because, having a car it's a pain in a lot of cases. And,
okay, so you are saying you support government-funded trains?
Yes.
Okay, so you're not in favor of free trade then?
No, free trade between countries. I mean, not a completely free market. I support things like free trade, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not in favor of tariffs, is what you're saying. You don't actually believe in people being able to trade freely from individual to individual.
I don't have a hard and fast rule against tariffs, but I mean, look, I want the outcome to be...
Okay, well then you're not in favor of free trade between countries then.
What are you in favor of, Dan?
It sounds like total control, and Dan should be in charge, and Dan knows what's best. Dan thinks that there needs to be government rails, so Dan is going to support the government rails because he believes, as he admitted to us last week, I don't know if y'all were on the show where he called and said this, that he's a utilitarian.
Yeah, I was here for that.
Yeah, and so therefore, what that means is that whatever Dan thinks the best outcome is, Dan is willing to take whatever steps are necessary to achieve whatever he thinks the best outcome is.
Well, utilitarianism is a philosophy based on the greatest good for the greatest number. And since everybody disagrees on what's good, then the way to get the greatest good for the greatest number is to have each person pursuing their own good in their own way. Because if everybody gets the same thing, most people aren't going to like it. If everybody has to listen to the same music, it's going to be bubblegum pop. And some people like that, but not everybody
But
likes
if Dan doesn't get his way, he's not going to be happy. Nobody.
You guys, there's no way to have things like huge systems of trains without there being some type of central authority to
Have you heard of the internet, dude?
Well, if you have to throw people in prison and ruin their lives,
nobody's going to get thrown
in
prison over this.
Oh, people get thrown in prison over taxes all the time. You're lying to yourself. You have to understand what a government is. A government starts out like a security company. Now, a security company comes to you and they say, hey, it's a dangerous world out there. If you give me some money every week, I'll protect you. Sounds great, right? A little bit of money, you get protection, but then the government gives you the other side of it. If you don't give me some money, they say, I'm going to come and burn down your house or rape your wife or throw you in prison or kidnap you. And that is when an organization goes from being a security company and becomes a criminal enterprise. That's how the mafia operates. If you don't buy a product from them that you don't want, they do violence against you. So your government and the mafia have exactly the same business model.
I want to give Dan a chance to respond to that. It's a great rant. Loved it. We're going to continue. We'll see what Dan has to say about the government being called out for what it is, which is a criminal enterprise from top to bottom. You can join us here at 603-283-6160 and bring up whatever's on your mind on Free Talk Live. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it. And once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world. So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced a series of measures to crack down on so-called ghost guns, which are untraceable weapons used in an escalating number of shootings. At the White House on Monday, the president said his new common sense policy will help save lives and reduce crime. From Washington, D.C., Benji Heyer reports.
Ghost guns, made from kits that can be purchased online and assembled in minutes at home, lack a serial number, rendering them almost impossible to track. US President Joe Biden says that means they could fall into the hands of criminals, domestic abusers or terrorists, people who would normally be prevented from purchasing a gun at a store. His new rule isn't a ban, like those imposed by several states, but rather a change in how the federal government treats these kits.
The United States Department of Justice is making it illegal for a business to manufacture one of these kits without a serial number. Illegal for a licensed gun dealer to sell them without a background check.
Ghost guns have fueled the epidemic of violence in the US, having been used in multiple recent shootings.
The U.S. and Indian defense and foreign ministers say their relationship is only growing stronger despite the U.S.'s concerns about India's lack of support for its policy towards Russia. They have just wrapped up the 2+2 dialogue, an annual meeting set up in 2018, FSN's Kate Fisher reports.
These annual talks have focused on improving bilateral relations and cooperation in Asia. It's also seen as part of Washington's strategy to help India become a counterweight to China's influence in the region. But this year's talks have been overshadowed by India's neutrality over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. US Secretary of State Blinken urged countries to join the US in condemning Russia, but said that India must make its own decision.
We, as a general proposition, are consulting with all of our allies and partners on the consequences of Putin's war, the atrocities being committed against the people of Ukraine. In our judgment, it is important that all countries, especially those with leverage, press Putin to end the war.
U.S. markets tumbled in the final hours of trading amid fears rising interest rates will slow the U.S. economy. Investors are bracing for new inflation figures due out on Tuesday. FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
The Dow lost more than 400 points on Monday, or 1.2%. The S&P fell by 1.7% and the Nasdaq closed the day down 2.2%. Analysts say investors are getting rid of more risky assets as they expect the Federal Reserve to continue increasing interest rates in reaction to rising inflation. Meanwhile, economic figures due out on Tuesday are expected to show US inflation continues to be at its highest in decades. Oil prices fell Monday amid continued concern COVID-19 lockdowns in China will lower demand.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FS.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, join us if you want. You can bring up whatever you want here. The number is 603-283-6160. Even if you're a control freak, we're happy to hear from you. You can talk about how it is you think you should force the world to be, or your local community, or whatever. It's Ian, Nobody, and Aria in the studio tonight. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We have Dan on the line in Nebraska, and he actually called in reference to Sarah's call earlier where she was talking about the choo-choo, the train there in New Mexico, that Sarah has just been in love with trains for a long time. Of course, she's a communist. And Dan says...
it's a love-hate relationship that she has with the trains, from what I can tell. She likes the trains. She hates the train stops, right? Because there are smokers there.
She's complaining about the bus stops, but yeah. Yeah, I don't know if she... Actually, we should have asked her if she's ever ridden the train that she was calling in about. That would have been a good question. But
she likes the train. She just doesn't... She wants somebody else to pay for it.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet she's never ridden the train that she's talking about.
Dan said... I suspect you're right about that because she would have no reason to go to Santa Fe. I mean, she basically just stays in her house in Albuquerque and calls talk radio all day. But
Albuquerque.
Dan is with us here. He says he's not a communist, claims that he believes in free trade, but then when we asked him about that belief, he said, well, no, he's actually in support of things like government regulations and tariffs and all that. No, I'd like you to respond to what Nobody said before about government being a criminal gang.
So the first thing I would say is that, and I know this might sound kind of weaselly, but on the topic of the trains themselves, since people are already paying taxes for like a million other things, I don't know why you have to nail the trains down as the reason that people are getting sent to jail.
That's not a response to what Nobody said about government being a criminal enterprise.
And for the record, the trains are not the worst thing they spend their money on. The worst thing they spend their money on is mass murder of children in Iraq, for example. Remember when Madeleine Albright was asked how she felt about killing 500,000 children, and she said, "Oh, it was worth it. I got what I wanted."
And second to the mass murder would be the mass incarceration that they do of their own people, I think, for victimless crimes and things like that. But what is it that you have to say specifically to Nobody's claims about government being a criminal enterprise, Dan?
Well, and I don't know if you want to go down this road, but you know that we have a little bit of disagreement about what the social contract is, whether or not it exists. Whether or not everyone
really
who's born in society is automatically opted into it. Because I would argue they are.
How?
We should be able to straighten that argument out. Why don't you bring up show me a copy of this social contract, and remind me of exactly when I signed it, because a contract is an agreement, right? You have to be willing to enter into an agreement.
No, Dan's already said that you opt into it automatically.
Well,
just
then
by
that's
existing.
not a contract. That's just something that one group of people forces on another group of people. That's called slavery, not contract.
Okay, and I understand because, well...
Do you understand,
look,
Dan?
I understand I understand the point you're making. Like, I understand how you're getting from A to B. I guess I'm not in on all the premises yet, because I actually...
Premise number one, where is the contract? That's a pretty simple one, right?
Yeah. And what exactly does it say?
You are born into the contract from your parents, because you...
So who consented to this contract?
So your parents
people who moved to America and naturalized themselves.
Okay, but I got forced into it.
I didn't move to America. I was born here.
Yeah, and your ancestors who naturalized themselves, you inherited their obligations and their benefits too from this contract.
Okay,
with your birth. That's what it means to be an American citizen.
Okay,
how does that happen?
Hold on. My family beat the United States here. We were here first.
Really?
Really. My family's been here since 1620.
Well, okay. I don't listen. And they never became citizens somehow? I mean, I'm sure
we were here first. The government then came and said, "No, we own you. Here's a social contract proving it."
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't show anybody a contract because it never has existed, and it never will exist because it's pure fantasy.
State, right? They didn't establish. They didn't make their own city. They didn't make their own state. They didn't.
No, they were here before there were cities here. There were no cities at that point, Dan. This is the 1620s. There was not a Philadelphia here.
Okay, well...
What if I decide to come up with a new social contract that says you have to send me a bunch of money so I can pay for things that I want and you don't? Isn't that just as fair as you're forcing a so-called social contract that I don't want on me?
Go get the rest of America on board, and you know what? I'd probably concede.
Well, that would be a lot easier if it wasn't for the fact that the rest of the country has been dumbed down through the government schools and propagandized.
People are more informed than they've ever been, and people are
informed of more things that aren't true.
So, Dan, again, where's the contract, dude?
What do you mean? So you're telling me that when people are going to college more, they're getting more educated careers. You're going to brush that off as people are getting.
People are going to college and studying women's studies so they can figure out how to be offended and push their victimhood on people.
Yeah, I think everyone in this room has a college degree, dude.
Unfortunately, I do have 2 years.
And none of us
college.
are like, hey, we're more educated because of this.
I wish I could have my time back, honestly.
You don't think you're more educated than a high school graduate?
No. College is high school with cigarettes. Dan, where's the contract? Dan, where's the contract?
The contract is your citizenship. It is that you
prove that I'm a citizen.
I never agreed to be a citizen.
Are you not a citizen?
Prove.
I would love to not be a citizen of the United States. Look, if they would just let me not be a citizen, I will happily not be a citizen.
They keep insisting that I am, but I'd like to see proof that I'm a citizen because do you know what the definition of a citizen is? I mean, you went to college.
I didn't sign nothing.
You went to college, right, Dan? So you must be able to define the word that you're using.
So is a citizen not like a fully like, to make it simple, it's like a fully fledged, legally recognized member of that nation?
Nope, that's not the definition of a citizen.
Okay, what is it?
Okay, so all you have to do is look it up in a dictionary, but I'll go ahead and give it to you because we've talked about this a number of times. And you can check it in a legal dictionary and you can check it in a normal dictionary and you will find the exact same definition. A citizen is one who owes a duty of allegiance in return for an obligation of protection. Now, given that definition, which again is the same legally as it is normally, What evidence is there that the government has an obligation to protect me?
I know that you're about to say that cops aren't actually legally allowed, forced to protect you. And here's the thing is that, Ian, although in these certain cases, there's no particular case where they have to, what they do is they actually provide you a place to live.
The cops provide me a place to live?
Well, they provided me a place to live for a while when I was in jail. I didn't like it, and they wouldn't let me leave.
Again, Dan, my family was here first. The U.S. government didn't provide anything to us.
Okay, well, Arya, what happened with those settlers in the state of Pennsylvania happened between them. Pennsylvania, at the end of the day.
Yes, I'm telling you, they got enslaved by the state.
They applied to be admitted into the union, and then they were.
Whether or not the individuals there were on board with it, the politicians came together and said, "This is our new government," and we're that's it.
And
right?
We've got the guns, so everybody kind of agrees to it if they don't want to be murdered.
Yeah. And here's the social contract proving you're okay with this. It's nonsense.
Thank you for the call tonight, Dan. The number is 603-283-6160. He's educated, though. He went to college. 603-283-6160. We'll talk a little bit more about, because he did bring up citizenship and then dodged my response, but I do want to talk a little bit further about an obligation to protect. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing. To be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
If you're looking for work, the person you are applying to is probably so swamped with applicants that he or she is tough to reach. So call early in the day, before 8 a.m., before the palace guards arrive. You'll need your prospect's direct number, and here's a sneaky way to get it. Suppose the company's main number is 555-5000. You should call 555-5012. When someone says, "Good morning, Pam Johnson," you should innocently say, "Oops, somebody here must have written this down wrong. I was calling for Tom Frederick. What's his direct number?" If the very next thing you hear isn't Pam giving you Tom's number, it may be, "Good morning, Tom Frederick." For more tips for job seekers and getting better results in all your day-to-day communication, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. The phones are open. You can join us here. Number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian Nobody and Aria in the studio here tonight. And we were just on the phone with Dan in Nebraska. We're going to get into what's going on with Elon Musk and the potential takeover of Twitter in moments. But I just wanted to continue on the point I was going to make with Dan regarding, we were talking about this so-called social contract. Of course, we asked Dan for any evidence that the thing exists, and naturally he could not provide that because
he didn't even attempt to.
Well,
right?
how could he?
That's the sad thing, is that he says that this document exists, but when we ask him for it or any information about this, he just goes,
he knows it's not a document.
You consented to it because you exist here, and the U.S. government gives you land or whatever nonsense he said.
Yeah. I thought they paid me. They made me pay them for land that they didn't give me. I thought that was how property taxes work.
Yeah, right. If you don't pay them, they kick you out of the land.
But they provide you nothing.
Yep. The whole thing's a scam from top to bottom, and the thing is, he knows there's no social contract. He knows there's no document. It's just a pure political fantasy. It's something that they like to talk about, and then when you finally call them on it, they just simply try to avoid answering the question and talking in generalities about why we need the government and how long it's been around and that you were born into it and just all these assertions about it.
Slavery was around for a long time, too. It didn't make it a good idea.
Right, and children were born into slavery as well.
I guess slavery was just a social contract.
Yes, it was. Well, actually, you could actually buy yourself out of slavery in that case.
Wow.
So
that I guess they had an advantage over us.
Yeah.
There's no escape for us.
Yeah, the amount never ends that the government demands from us, and it always increases. So I asked him about, he brought up the idea of citizenship and it insinuated that we were all citizens. And I said, well, all right, what's the definition of citizen? And he didn't know, of course.
I know the U.S. government says I'm one of their subjects.
Oh, they love to say it.
But, I don't recall ever agreeing to be one of their subjects.
And that's a much better word, by the way, subject. It's much more accurate to what we are to them. And in fact, if you listen to a police scanner, you'll hear them refer to people as subjects, which is to me very revealing. They don't say a citizen called in, or we're looking for a citizen on Main Street. No, they say subject. And that's because
accurate.
They're being truthful in that one instance. A citizen is someone who owes a duty of allegiance in return for an obligation of protection. And when I mentioned that, he says, oh, well, you're going to say they don't have an obligation to protect. Yes, that is what I'm going to say, because that is what they say. That is what their Supreme Court says every time it comes up.
Not only are they not protecting us, they are actively doing American citizens harm.
Yes. And threatening us, and harming us, and destroying our homes, and destroying our lives, and destroying our freedoms.
And shooting random people down like dogs in the street while they're at it.
That's right.
And that's very different from, their obligation to protect us. So
that's because there is no obligation to protect, and because they are totally a criminal gang, and they are completely dishonorable. Even if they say they're going to do a thing, if they don't do it, they have no responsibility. There's no actual way to hold them responsible. And so if you don't believe me...
Remember how they told Russia they weren't going to expand to NATO?
And continued after the end of the Soviet Union. So if you don't believe me, though, I mean, I can prove this point, that they have no obligation to protect you. Just go search for it on the internet. Put quotes around it if you need to. No obligation to protect. And you will find court case after court case where people, they thought the government was there to protect them. They thought the police would come when they called them. They thought the cops had some sort of obligation to stop them from being raped and murdered. And you know what? It turns out they don't. And it turns out the Supreme Court has ruled this over and over. This isn't some one little, one case, some obscure case from 100 years ago. No, this is over and over. It keeps coming up, and the Supreme Court keeps ruling the same way. It's like, no. Government has no obligation to protect you.
So it's like a contract. The only difference is that one side of the contract has no obligation to provide a product, but the other side of the product has an obligation to pay for that product and to pay whatever they say, whether he likes the product or not, whether he gets the product or not. He still has to pay and pay and pay.
Oh, they're going to give it to you, all right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What is it they say? The government is there to provide service, and the media is there to provide lubrication.
Painfully true.
Yep. So that's the game. That's how it works. And what are we going to do about it? Well, that's really the important question. And of course, liberty-minded people should get to New Hampshire as soon as possible to get together so we actually have a chance to somehow end this insanity. Because if there are enough people who come together that understand these ideas, then they become unstoppable.
Yeah.
But that's really the key. We have to have numbers. We have to have that. That is what makes the whole difference. Whether we're talking about a civil disobedience movement or a political movement or non-cooperation, whatever we're talking about, numbers solves everything.
Get enough people here, they'll be begging us to secede.
Indeed.
And I think this is more or less what Mark was getting at in his very first call. One of the statements he made was that, realistically, he didn't put it into these terms, but every government that exists requires the passive consent of its subjects.
That's right.
If from a democratic government to your worst oligarchy to your monarchy, they all require the subjects to not rebel against it, or at the least to comply and obey.
That's because there's always more subjects than there are rulers.
Yes. And they need the soldiers to enforce that, and that's why they always pay the soldiers and the enforcers of their decrees before they pay the peasantry. It's always been the same game. We're still dealing with kings now. We just call them something differently, and they still are doing the same crap they've always done. They've learned. I mean, they've evolved.
Oh yeah.
They've learned that we can't just claim divine right to be kings because that conflicts with their desire to see separation of church and state. So that instead they just become a church. Well, instead they just became a church.
Without calling it that.
Yeah, and now they're like, but look, we have separation of church and state. And to most people, they're like, yeah, that's great, because they don't realize that what we're dealing with is a religion. It's got everything you would expect to find in a religion. It's got the robed people, it's got the pews, it's got the emblems, the hymns, the chants.
That's right.
All of it. Everything that you would expect to find. It's even got there's only two people that you can 100% confess your crimes to, and not worry about them getting off: the priest and the attorneys.
Yep.
And there's significance in that the two professions on the entire planet are priests in different religions. And you can say anything you want to them, and it's confidential.
And all you need to know is that prosperity is sin. And if you sin, you're doomed to burn in the eternal fires of global warming.
The number here is 603-283-6160. And I think that what you point out there is just so important for people to understand. Somehow the rose-colored glasses of the state need to be pulled off of people. And I understand some people aren't going to want to see it. People like Dan, for instance, who completely lost within that belief system. And of course, the irony is so many people who love the state are themselves atheists. They can see through.
And all they have to do is some quick Google searches. Look at pictures of the insides of churches and then Google the insides of courtrooms and compare the two sets of images. They're identical, man.
Oh, but the difference is we are the government, Arya. It's not a god. It's us.
Yeah, we are the god. Yes, that's the issue.
If you're the government, I've got a bone to pick with you.
That's exactly how it came into existence, though. This whole... It's them allowing themselves to stroke their ego and feel like, I am God because I am government and government is God.
Yeah.
And they don't have the capacity to recognize that they're no longer atheists at all. They call themselves atheists, but they're not. They're self-worshipers. They believe themselves to have undergone apotheosis in the form of the state. And by becoming part of the state, they become something greater than themselves. Right. They become the rulers of the universe.
I'm more than a man. I am the state.
Isn't apotheosis the process of becoming a pharmacist?
No.
Because you're an apothecary?
That's apothecariosis.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
The number if you want to join the show, 603-283-6160. Coming up, Elon Musk stirred it up last week, or I guess he bought the stock a few weeks ago, but then announced that he had bought over 9% of stock for Twitter, which he is constantly tweeting. He's a very popular tweeter on there, and of course he's also the world's wealthiest man. So he dropped $3 billion on, again, just over 9% of the stock, and as a result, the Twitter board of directors said, "Hey, Elon, we got a spot for you. You want to be on our board, right? Come on in." Well, he's made a decision about that. We'll tell you about it on the way. It's Free Talk Live. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced a series of measures to crack down on so-called ghost guns, which are untraceable weapons used in an escalating number of shootings. At the White House on Monday, the president said his new common sense policy will help save lives and reduce crime. From Washington, D.C., Benji Heyer reports.
Ghost guns, made from kits that can be purchased online and assembled in minutes at home, lack a serial number, rendering them almost impossible to track. US President Joe Biden says that means they could fall into the hands of criminals, domestic abusers, or terrorists, people who would normally be prevented from purchasing a gun at a store. His new rule isn't a ban, like those imposed by several states, but rather a change in how the federal government treats these kits.
The United States Department of Justice is making it illegal for a business to manufacture one of these kits without a serial number. Illegal for a licensed gun dealer to sell them without a background check.
Ghost guns have fueled the epidemic of violence in the US, having been used in multiple recent shootings.
The U.S. and Indian defense and foreign ministers say their relationship is only growing stronger despite the U.S.'s concerns about India's lack of support for its policy towards Russia. They have just wrapped up the 2+2 dialogue, an annual meeting set up in 2018, FSN's Kate Fisher reports.
These annual talks are focused on improving bilateral relations and cooperation in Asia. It's also seen as part of Washington's strategy to help India become a counterweight to China's influence in the region. But this year's talks have been overshadowed by India's neutrality over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. US Secretary of State Blinken urged countries to join the US in condemning Russia, but said that India must make its own decision.
As a general proposition, are consulting with all of our allies and partners on the consequences of Putin's war, the atrocities being committed against the people of Ukraine. In our judgment, it is important that all countries, especially those with leverage, press Putin to end the war.
U.S. markets tumbled in the final hours of trading amid fears rising interest rates will slow the U.S. economy. Investors are bracing for new inflation figures due out on Tuesday. FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
The Dow lost more than 400 points on Monday, or 1.2%. The S&P fell by 1.7% and the Nasdaq closed the day down 2.2%. Analysts say investors are getting rid of more risky assets as they expect the Federal Reserve to continue increasing interest rates in reaction to rising inflation. Meanwhile, economic figures due out on Tuesday are expected to show US inflation continues to be at its highest in decades. Oil prices fell Monday amid continued concern COVID-19 lockdowns in China will lower demand.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. We're going to catch up today with Inna Sovsun, a Ukrainian lawmaker from whom we've heard before about the crisis in her country. Today, her view on why the Russians launched their horrific attack on Friday against a crowded railway station in eastern Ukraine. After all, Moscow claims it's trying to protect civilians in the separatist eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. So why launch an indiscriminate attack against people trying to evacuate the area?
They are doing that precisely for one reason, because it is children and women who are trying to evacuate. I think that what they're doing now is they're trying to scare people into not leaving, because they need civilians in the territories that they plan to capture. Again, a big issue whether they would be able to do that. I hope Ukrainian army will stand still. But I believe there are two reasons for that. First of all, they're using civilians as a shield. They're using them as hostages. But second, even if they manage to get control over the territory, and if there are no civilians left there, that would be a pretty hard sell, even to a brainwashed Russian audience. Like, we have been protecting people of Donbass, but all of them left when we actually came into control of the territory. That would be a really tough sell.
She says life in Kiev is returning to some semblance of normalcy now the Russians have withdrawn from the area around the capital. But that only intensifies concerns of a new offensive in the east. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. U.S. President Biden announces a series of measures to crack down on so-called ghost guns. The U.S. and Indian defense and foreign ministers meet amid U.S. concerns about India's lack of support for the U.S. policy towards Russia. And U.S. markets tumble in the final hours of trading amid fears that rising interest rates will slow the U.S. economy. That is the latest Feature Story News. Ira Spitzer reporting.
From Bette Davis's first role as a piece of chocolate cake in the 1931 film Palmy Days to the discovery of Niagara Falls in 1996, The Onion looks back at this week in history. On May 16, 1929, the first Academy Awards were handed out in categories such as Greatest Achievement in Blackface, Best Catholic Whipping Scene, and Most Gorgeous Gams on a Broad. The highlight of the night occurred when Wings won the award for Best Picture without a single Dago, Tar Baby, or Wetback. And on May 15th, 1940, the first McDonald's opened in San Bernardino, California, back when a young Grimace was just working as a cashier. And that was what happened this week in history. As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, history is actually pretty racist.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can bring up whatever's on your mind here. Kicking off the third hour of the program. Coming up, Elon Musk and Twitter. Musk is now saying he's not going to be joining the board of directors. Joining you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody. And Aria.
We're going to your phone calls and thoughts to start things out here. And again, the number for you is 603-283-6160. Let's go to the phones and to the fun. Greg in New York, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Greg, what's on your mind?
Up?
You know, I was, like everyone else, following the horrific war and conflict that's going on in Ukraine. And
I have not been following it, so not everyone has been following it.
Not everyone.
And I don't know how horrific it actually is. I can't believe what the media is saying about it. But that said, I'm sure for some people it's pretty awful.
Well, this is the thing. Believing or not, what's interesting is there's hardly any videos by civilians coming out of the region.
How strange is that?
You know, it's due to the government on both sides. So the Russian government doesn't let the soldiers use the internet. And of course, it's a top-down organization, the army, so they can't. But then the civilians in Ukraine, there's a law that says you can't film the movements of your country's troops. You can go to jail. Yeah. Because you're helping the...
Even so, there are still ways they could create video that wouldn't, involve Ukrainian soldiers. Like they could have, recorded videos of some of these Russian massacres, and it wouldn't have run afoul of.
That's what I'm saying. I wanted to call and I wanted to suggest something. Sorry about my voice today. I wanted to suggest certain things which should be obvious if we, the people, would actually be in charge of our governments. One of them is if we want body cams for cops, wouldn't we want body cams for service members on active duty who are in war zones to prove that they're not committing war crimes? Wouldn't it actually be beneficial to their own country to store that, evidence to show that they haven't actually been killing?
Yes, but the U.S. government is committing war crimes, so that's the last thing it wants.
Well, yeah, neither the U.S. nor Russia take the International Criminal Court seriously. In fact, Trump went after them when they tried to investigate U.S. war crimes in Afghanistan.
Oh, not just Trump. I mean, George Bush, Barack Obama, Trump, and as I understand it, Julian Assange is still sitting in prison, and Biden hasn't called off the prosecution either, so he's covering up the war crimes too. Let's not pretend it's all about Trump. Trump is the one president, and I'm not a Trump fan, but I'll say one good thing about him. He didn't start any new wars, and that's something no other American president in living memory can say.
But I want to say about this is that if you look at the system, right, it's so messed up. Nobody talks about the actual problems with the system. They talk about, which country's worse and what country is doing the genocidal rapes now. And it's like, well, now it's probably Russia, unfortunately. I mean, before in the Balkans, it was, Serbians doing it, perhaps, or Pakistan doing it during the war of Bangladesh independence and so on. How about we can prevent these conflicts by creating frameworks before conflicts start? Like Taiwan and China could be creating a framework right now about what would happen if somebody let off a missile. But we don't even have a framework to de-escalate a nuclear war. So if the first nuke flies, people just assume, oh, I guess that's the end of the world, that's it. And that's like ridiculous. Why don't you actually put in place during peacetime something that might come in handy, like an understanding of how to de-escalate things?
Well, because that would tell a country, that they can nuke the United States, and the United States would respond with sanctions or something like that. in order to deter someone from nuking the United States government has found it necessary to threaten to nuke in retaliation.
Well, nuke. I mean, there were a couple times. I think it was. You can look them up. Arkhipov, I think, Vladimir or something. There was two guys that literally refused to launch the nuke. Right. One of them was in Russia. The computer said that the nukes are coming towards Russia, and he thought it was a glitch, and he was right.
Yeah.
The other guy was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was one of three people, and he refused to join to launch the nuke from the sub. But those are the last line of defense, man. This is so stupid. This is so stupid. These governments have nukes. They have armies with no accountability, no body cameras.
And they're never going to do it. They have no interest in putting body cameras on their own troops because for them, it's all about war crimes. It's all about doing horrific things to the other side. And so the less transparency there is from their purposes, the better.
Hey, Madeleine Albright said 500,000 murdered children was worth it. Because she got her way.
Those are the kinds of psychopaths that we are talking about. So, I mean, your idea isn't a bad idea if there were going to continue to be a military that is, in some way concerned with its appearance, but they're not.
The only way to end war is to end government, because the bottom line is government is made up of psychopaths who are willing to do anything for power over others. And as long as we give them the opportunity to indulge themselves and force us to pay for the weapons they use to murder people, they're going to keep right on murdering people.
Oh, and they have their allies in the media. The mass media is also always carrying water for whatever country they're in. So you're basically going to see demonization and delegitimization of the other side always. And, it's funny because Russia has 11 million people that have family in the Ukraine and vice versa. And it's funny because they know that their family members are normal people, right? Everyone, I think it was the Nazi guy who was captured. I forgot who it was. He said, regular people don't want to kill each other. Most people don't want to kill each other, but the leaders get to tell them, you're under attack. You should be afraid. And they tell you for years, and they don't have direct flights anymore, and they don't have business dealings. Next thing you know, 8 years later, they both call each other Nazis, and they both call each other fascists. Think about that. Right now, I can understand Ukraine is under attack, right? And they obviously hate the Russian government. But the Russian people listen to the media, and they support their government, at least in polling, right? So Ukrainians think all the Russians.
I mean, the polls are useless, though. I mean,
those are manipulated too, right?
Yeah. So it's the same here in the United States. The polls going into the 2016 election predicted an alarming landslide victory for Hillary Clinton. So I mean, polling is useless.
First of all, the polling. But Russia is a huge country.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Polish people. I was like, that's a little bigoted.
Greg, your points are spot on tonight. I appreciate hearing from you, and thanks for the call.
It's true.
The number is 603-283-6160. Yeah, the media's job is to carry water for the government. It wasn't supposed to be that way. They were supposed to be a check and balance. They were supposed to question the state. They were supposed to hold feet to flames and that sort of thing. But that
when
happen.
They did that, they ended up, being like Julian Assange and getting arrested and, held
they see what's happening to Julian Assange. So anybody that might have gotten it in their head to actually, stir up the water a little bit, they know what's coming for them.
The media is the entertainment wing of the military industrial complex.
Yeah, bread and circuses. Keep the people distracted. You know what? Something I didn't know happened today since he mentioned Russia and their media, I went to RT. I've been going to RT more often recently just to get the other side of the story when it comes to Ukraine, because the Western media, the Western governments of the world do not want you reading what's at RT, and thankfully, at least in the United States, you can still access their website without it being blocked. Headline, Biden bans ghost guns. So we're going to learn more about that, what they're doing to target people who are making their own guns at home, which used to be a completely...
I can see why you'd be scared of him. He's almost a ghost.
Which used to be a completely legal thing to do. Now, apparently, it's not. We'll tell you more about that on the way. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to MyMagicMud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. MyMagicMud.com, FTL20.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Free Talk Live, the show where anyone can call about whatever they want. And we do mean anyone.
I done forgot your name, but we had 9/11, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, if they weren't here, could it have happened?
Could what have happened? If who wasn't here? How wasted are you? That's what I want to know.
No, sir. No, I'm not wasted.
Okay.
No, please just listen to me.
Okay.
If the people weren't here that drove the planes into the Twin Towers,
yeah,
right?
They flew them. They didn't drive them, but okay.
No, I'm not saying that. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Because now
wow.
Yeah. I gotta think a minute.
That's all right. We got nothing but time.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio is great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you're invited to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Arya.
You can join us online at freetalklive.com and find various different features on that site. So enjoy those. And if you enjoy what we do here on Free Talk Live, you can back us up by helping us out over the AMPS Patreon. You can do that over at amps.freetalklive.com. And I do want to say thanks to Indie Gun Church, who is a Free Talk Live silver member of the AMPS Patreon. You can go to amps.freetalklive.com and get signed up over there. That's amps.freetalklive.com. As we go to your calls and thoughts, let's talk to Tom, listening to WGOW in Chattanooga. Go ahead, Tom.
Yes, good evening. I'm enjoying your show
Thanks.
very much. I just wanted to comment briefly about a couple things you said. I'm not an anarchist, but I do believe in limited government, and I think it should be limited by law, which in this case, as far as the U.S. government, is the Constitution. But it seems like in this discussion about war or potential war with Ukraine or between Russia and Ukraine and us getting involved, there's been no discussion at all about, whether there's any legal basis for our involvement. I mean, American property and American citizens haven't been attacked. It's not, in my opinion, it's not our war, and I'm a non-interventionist.
Is there serious discussion about the United States getting involved?
Well, there's been a lot of mission creep, as they like to call it, like supporting Slovenia, I think it was, or Slovakia with missiles, and Poland with the airplanes. A few weeks ago, there's a lot now. There's been talk about U.S. Trainers going into some of the NATO countries that border Ukraine, and I just think that there is an agenda here to push a war, push the United States into a war over there, and I think it's really dangerous. It reminds me of what happened before the Great War, the First World War.
That wasn't that great, from what I heard.
No, yeah. But
and the scariest thing has been Joe Biden, the senile bastard, screaming for regime change.
Oh yeah. He's just, well, they knew back in November. I think Putin said that if there was an invitation by NATO for Ukraine to join, that would be that would trigger a Russian intervention, and we knew about this way back in the in November at least, and there was talk, and a lot of saner heads in the military that were trying to avoid a war were ignored, and I think that they definitely allowed this situation to get worse in order to use it as a pretext for intervention.
I don't know, man.
I think they did it intentionally, because at the same time they were telling the Ukraine that they weren't going to let them join NATO. Mm-hmm. They were saying, but we're not going to say anything publicly. We're going to let everybody else think you're joining NATO, just to bust Putin's balls.
I mean, what right did Russia have to draw that line in the sand for Ukraine in the first place? If Ukraine is a sovereign nation, then Russia has no right to say you can't join this military alliance.
Well, the problem is, though, that why is there even a NATO? I mean, there's no more Warsaw Pact, and if you had a hostile alliance on your border, like with Poland and potentially Ukraine, I mean, you could see from the Russian perspective, even if you disagreed with it, that it might cause instability, it might cause a war, and we went ahead and said we would be considering that. So
I don't disagree. I was hoping that Trump was actually going to withdraw the United States from NATO. That would have been fantastic.
God, I would have loved it.
But he never followed through, man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least he kept us out of war for 4 years, and that was more than what the powers that be now.
Yeah, Tom, I think you're right. There's definitely a lot of saber rattling out there, and of course the mainstream media would love a war because that just means more ratings for them. They love fear, and they love, people tuning in through a commercial break. So that's definitely something they're interested in.
The issue with the war with a nation the size of Russia, though, is that this isn't going to be one of those wars where the United States just fights it over there.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Bombs will fall on American cities.
Sure.
Yeah, it could get out of hand quickly. And
Biden, I think, to some extent, probably is aware of that, and that's why he has been let's just say, cautious about getting involved in a full-blown conflict. I mean, to whatever credit he deserves for that, he did, he has been saying that we are going to stay out, or the U.S. government is going to stay out of the conflict. But then, as you point out, Tom, they're doing this over here and they're doing that over there, and they're helping with the...
They've stayed out just like they stayed out of World War II, right?
Yeah.
Which means they just didn't actively send military over there to fight.
And they could have stayed out of Ukraine in the first place. They didn't have to organize a coup there in 2014 that set this whole mess in motion.
They did.
But they did.
Well,
they didn't have to do it.
And a lot of the same neoconservative groups that were pushing for intervention in Libya and in Syria, they're all beating the drums now with this situation with Ukraine. And the same voices are speaking out about how we need to do something. And they keep drumming it in. And there's this atrocity propaganda that's going on. I don't know how much of it is true, but there's a lot of propaganda. And
those evil bastards never met a war they didn't like.
I mean, as far as I can tell, it's all propaganda.
Yep.
Right? I haven't seen anything that makes me think, yes, this is definitively true. It has no coloring to it whatsoever. No one's slanting it one direction or another. It's just the straight facts.
Yeah, it's a mess. I read Epoch Times or Epoch Times, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and it's pretty good. It's one of the few papers that's not totally controlled. I mean, it's run by Chinese. I think it was begun by Chinese anti-communists.
Yeah,
I mean, those guys and Babylon Bee are probably my best sources of factual information.
I like the
Babylon Bee, huh?
Well, they're more honest about what they're doing than CNN and Fox and MSNBC. And the only people who are more honest than them is probably Russia Today.
Well, I mean, they have their issues, but I got to say, Russia Today has been really excellent at their coverage of this so far as giving two sides of a story. They actually report like real journalists do, even though they're run by the Russian government. So you still have to know where they're coming from, but you get both sides in most cases with Russia
And
Today.
the funny thing about that, though, is that the Russian government tightly controls the media in Russia, but not the Russian media outside of Russia.
Tom,
so
thanks,
it's
man.
Kind of weird that they know what's right, but they won't do it at home.
Thank you, Tom, for the call tonight. Definitely appreciate hearing from you. And if you want to bring up whatever's on your mind, you're certainly welcome to do that as the war saber rattling continues. People want to see a no-fly zone over Ukraine, which others are saying would lead directly to war with Russia. If that
well, who would enforce the no-fly zone?
Presumably the United States.
I can see why that would lead to war.
People seem to forget that, war between the United States and Russia is likely to be the end of the human race.
There's more on the way here at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join us on the radio. Ian, Nobody, and Aria here on Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced a series of measures to crack down on so-called ghost guns, which are untraceable weapons used in an escalating number of shootings. At the White House on Monday, the president said his new common sense policy will help save lives and reduce crime. From Washington, D.C., Benji Heyer reports.
Ghost guns, made from kits that can be purchased online and assembled in minutes at home, lack a serial number, rendering them almost impossible to track. US President Joe Biden says that means they could fall into the hands of criminals, domestic abusers or terrorists, people who would normally be prevented from purchasing a gun at a store. His new rule isn't a ban, like those imposed by several states, but rather a change in how the federal government treats these kits.
The United States Department of Justice is making it illegal for a business to manufacture one of these kits without a serial number. Illegal for a licensed gun dealer to sell them without a background check.
Ghost guns have fueled the epidemic of violence in the US, having been used in multiple recent shootings.
The U.S. and Indian defense and foreign ministers say their relationship is only growing stronger despite the U.S.'s concerns about India's lack of support for its policy towards Russia. They have just wrapped up the 2+2 dialogue, an annual meeting set up in 2018, FSN's Kate Fisher reports.
These annual talks are focused on improving bilateral relations and cooperation in Asia. It's also seen as part of Washington's strategy to help India become a counterweight to China's influence in the region. But this year's talks have been overshadowed by India's neutrality over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. US Secretary of State Blinken urged countries to join the US in condemning Russia, but said that India must make its own decision.
As a general proposition, are consulting with all of our allies and partners on the consequences of Putin's war, the atrocities being committed against the people of Ukraine. In our judgment, it is important that all countries, especially those with leverage, press Putin to end the war.
U.S. markets tumbled in the final hours of trading amid fears rising interest rates will slow the U.S. economy. Investors are bracing for new inflation figures due out on Tuesday. FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
The Dow lost more than 400 points on Monday, or 1.2%. The S&P fell by 1.7% and the Nasdaq closed the day down 2.2%. Analysts say investors are getting rid of more risky assets as they expect the Federal Reserve to continue increasing interest rates in reaction to rising inflation. Meanwhile, economic figures due out on Tuesday are expected to show US inflation continues to be at its highest in decades. Oil prices fell Monday amid continued concern COVID-19 lockdowns in China will lower demand.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open if you want to join us at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com. Archives are there, and they go back for years. You can enjoy those at freetalklive.com. Here tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Aria.
Aria, you wanted to talk about the latest with Elon Musk, the world's wealthiest man, who recently purchased over 9% of the stock in Twitter. And I think we covered this on our show a week ago when that news was breaking. And they, I think the next day, offered him a seat on the board, and it sounded like he was going to go for it. And
I didn't pay that much attention. I didn't know if he was actually offered a seat or if he just expected that he was going to get a seat, or if people expected, oh, well, he's got almost 10% of Twitter stock. Surely they'll let him be on the board.
Yep.
And he's the single largest shareholder.
Yep, he is. And they extended the invitation to him last week, and it sounded like he was going to do that. But then last night, the CEO of Twitter, I think his name is Parag Agrawal. Agrawal.
Wow, it's amazing that a guy with a name that long came to work for a company with messages that are so short.
Parag.
he must use up half his message with just his name.
He posted on Twitter, wherever, to his personal account, saying that Musk is not going to be joining the board of directors. And that was last night. 1 hour afterwards, Elon Musk posted on his Twitter profile just an image of a smiley face covering its mouth with its hand and laughing. And that's
I did not see that.
Yeah, we'll let you tell the story from here, Aria.
Well, you went over most of the basics, at least that I have them. It was supposed to take effect on Saturday, but Elon shared that same morning that he will no longer be joining the board. So evidently he was open to it. Yeah, and did a psych. Mr. Agrawal did not provide a reason, but he said, "I believe this is for the best. We have and will always value input from our shareholders, whether they are on our board or not. Elon is our biggest shareholder, and we will remain open to his input."
It was a very carefully worded statement. That was an excerpt from it. I read the whole thing.
What would Elon Musk have gained from being on the board? I don't know how this nonsense works.
I mean, that's the most direct way generally to move a company. The board,
unless you buy the whole thing out.
Well, there's that. The board selects the CEO and
sets policy.
Yeah, by changing the CEO, you can completely change a corporate culture.
But he's just one. He would just be one guy on a board of, probably at least 10, if not 20 people or something like that, right? So he would just ultimately, I think, get bogged down in wasting his time arguing with or trying to persuade these board members to run this company completely differently, presuming that Elon Musk values things differently than those who've been running Twitter thus far. He would likely be opposed in what it is that he would be trying to do.
Well, why would they care what he has to say? I mean, so what? This billionaire comes in with $3 billion, but if you don't listen to him and he's like, okay, well, screw you, I'm selling my shares, then okay, that doesn't hurt your company.
Shares vote. Okay.
I understand that, but he's only got 10%.
The board of directors can replace the CEO. The shareholders can replace the board of directors. And and although he only personally has a 10% stake, he's a well-respected guy. A lot of people have a lot of expectations as to what he might be able to do, and corporate battles are fought through proxies. Most people don't vote their own shares. They find some other big shareholder who they think has good ideas for the company, and they say, "You vote my shares." And
sounds tedious.
Yes.
Well, it's a lot less tedious because after that, I mean, it's maybe more tedious for the guy who has to be voting for a bunch of people, but the rest of the people involved don't have to think about it.
So Musk tweeted a face with a hand over mouth after Mr. Agrawal's tweet, but Mr. Musk appears to have deleted that tweet, along with several others he posted over the weekend that included criticisms, suggestions, and apparent jokes about Twitter. But luckily, they have a link here, so everything is permanent on the internet there,
There's
Elon.
an archive.
Yes.
Not the video of the Moderna CEO trying to explain why he had a patent on the spike protein 3 years before the pandemic. I went looking for that video again, couldn't find it.
Did you try Odyssey?
I did. I didn't find it there either.
That's too bad.
So analysts pondered what Mr. Musk's move not to join the board means for his role with Twitter. His board term was originally set for 2 years, and as long as he remained a director, he couldn't hold more than 14.9% of the company's stock, according to a securities filing. Without a board seat, he could potentially build an even bigger stake if he wanted.
Right.
So he hasn't said that his reason is because he wants to own more than 14.9%, but
he just laughed.
Yeah.
That's all he said.
And he could well have more control and less tedium, because if he amasses enough shares, he could become influential in promoting several different board members.
So he's known for his unpredictable behavior, as well as his business acumen. Evidently, Twitter stock went up when he announced that he was owning
25% or 26% in one day, one morning.
Well, the biggest problem with Twitter is they're alienating half of the country actively, and that's not a good idea for the business that they're in.
Well, Someone else was here last week making that argument. It may have actually been you, and I've given it some thought. I'm not sure that it's necessarily a bad business decision on their part. It depends on who's going to give them money and who isn't going to give them money. If their advertisers, the people who are paying their bills, are like, hey, look, we don't want this right-wing content on your platform and we're not going to continue paying you if you have it, then it makes business sense for Twitter to be like, okay, well, we won't have that content on our platform. And that's what sends, conservatives to things like Gab and Parler and Truther and whatever it is they're rambling on about now, instead of decentralizing and going away from these centralized tech platforms that are just going to ultimately censor them as well. But I'm not sure it's necessarily a bad decision for them to alienate half of the population, because if it was half of the population, they would by default lose money, I would imagine.
Could Trump buy Twitter, more Twitter stock? Let's say he buys 51%. Some people have been saying, sorry, Trump. Elon.
I mean, they're mostly one and the same. The only thing we're waiting on is for Musk to say, I'm going to run for president. They're both welfare whores who have never actually contributed anything of value to society.
I'm not going to go so far as to say that about.
I will, but only to push people's buttons.
What were you saying there, nobody?
I think he's contributed a lot, but
yeah, I mean, he's got some interesting.
Well, I mean, if the government gave me a few $1 billion, I could probably come up with some ideas too.
But what I was going to say
is, pay the engineers to implement them.
If Musk gets 51% of the stock in Twitter, then he becomes the majority shareholder. And could he then decide to take the company private? Or would he need the board of directors? Like, what does 51% of stock get you to be able to do? Could he then replace everybody?
The thing is, I'm pretty sure he could, because who's going to outvote him?
Right.
You don't even need 50% if you're an influential person, because you don't have to buy your allies out. You only have to buy your enemies out.
Good point. Good point. So yeah, he might be able to do it with 30% or 25% or something.
Oh yeah, 25% could easily be a controlling stake or part of a controlling coalition. Corporate boards act like parliaments, where people form like coalitions of people who agree.
We got more coming up here. You can share your thoughts on the Twitter situation with Elon Musk. What are his plans? I suspect only he knows, but it will be interesting to watch, because whether you like him or not, he is an entertaining character.
I don't think he can predict himself necessarily.
There's more coming up.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict, or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are
having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. The phones are open. You can join us here. Number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. What is going to happen with Elon Musk and Twitter? You know, normally I don't really care at all about what happens on a corporate board, and really I don't care in this particular case, but I am interested in watching Elon Musk because he, like Donald Trump, is an entertaining character. And he's up to something, and it is pretty interesting to watch, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I care because, you know, Twitter played a big part in rigging this last election by participating hugely in the cover-up of Hunter Biden's laptop and his corruption. And the other thing you have to remember is that the which country was paying off Hunter Biden?
Ukraine.
The Ukraine. How much does that have to do with the very unusual lengths that Joe Biden is willing to go to make the Ukrainian, or at least the Ukrainian government, happy?
It's an excellent question. Coincidence?
And
probably not.
And why is it that European politicians, it seems, have no fear of visiting the Ukraine in the middle of a war?
Yeah, that's interesting. You're talking about the photo ops
saw that.
that have been going on?
You ever see Wag the Dog?
I'm familiar with it, but I have not seen it.
Yeah. It's a very interesting movie.
Yeah, your point being that if they are indeed under attack, as we are purported to be believing, that why would these people who are normally, like, we see what politicians
they're cowards.
do. Right, they're cowards, right? You saw what they did on January 6th when people were taking an unauthorized tour. Remember the pictures from inside Congress?
Unarmed people taking selfies. They were terrified.
They were cowering. They were like putting on these crazy bag helmets to keep themselves safe from COVID or something like that with air filtration on it. It was insane. These people are complete cowards. So, yeah, they definitely wouldn't go somewhere where there was a chance that there'd be some errant bomb that all of a sudden would find its way to where they were staying.
Well, as I understand
not even errant, could be just plausibly deniable.
As I understand it, the Ukrainian military has succeeded in pushing Russia back to some extent. So maybe it was the European leaders visited the safe parts of Ukraine. Because the nation
missiles can still fly.
Sure, but just because a country is at war doesn't mean that every conceivable inch of land is a possible, bombing target at any given moment.
Yeah, that's probably true, But that said, I mean, how many other wars has that happened? I mean, did that happen in Iraq? In Afghanistan? Did you see a bunch of politicians parading around over there?
No.
It happened occasionally. You'd see congressmen go over there, but it was pretty rare.
Yeah, well, they were probably flying into a green zone where, it was completely controlled for a large swath by the U.S. military.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't want to get a shoot thrown
Clinton
at them.
claimed to get shot at by a sniper at one point, but she was lying.
She did claim that.
I don't remember that one.
It's so hard to remember every little thing that happens, but she sure enough claimed that, they got off the helicopters and there was sniper fire and they were running while undercover. It was insane. It was like none of that happened.
Yeah.
So speaking of things that are happening, though, it's unclear what Musk is planning. Mr. Agrawal, just months into his tenure as the new CEO of Twitter, said that it had asked Musk to join the board following Musk's acquiring of almost 10% of Twitter stock. Musk declined, and now Agrawal is, he gave his corporate sponsored little tweet, but he also said, there will be distractions ahead, but our goals and priorities remain unchanged, he wrote. The decisions we make and how we execute is in our hands, no one else's. Let's tune out the noise and stay focused on the work and what we're building.
What are they building?
A tyranny.
Yeah, a centralized platform of controlling what we can and can't microblog about.
The Ministry of Truth is what they're building.
It's interesting to me that he implies that Musk's purchase of 9.4% of Twitter stock and his attempts to change the company are distractions and that their goals and priorities are unchanged, which is not what Musk wants at the very least. Musk wants it to be purportedly a freer place to speak.
That is purportedly what he is interested in, but again, only time will tell as to how this all shakes out. We'll keep an eye on it for sure. The other news that I think probably is going to deserve more discussion than this, but I do want to get it in here tonight, and that is that Biden has claimed he is banning ghost guns. Now, can one of y'all define what a ghost gun is?
A ghost gun is a gun that was manufactured outside the captive industrial plant that stamps serial numbers on it. So it was either made in somebody's basement or it was largely made by a company but left unfinished so the consumer could finish it. But one way or another, it's a gun that it's an undocumented gun.
Right.
And I like my guns like I like my immigrants, undocumented.
So it could be a 3D printed gun. It could be a gun put together from parts or some sort of combination of the two, basically, right?
Yes.
I tend to think of ghost guns, A True Ghost Guns, as being one of these that, was 3D printed or milled at home or something like that. It's just completely off the radar, completely unknown.
Right.
I understand that, the ones that don't have serial numbers that you buy at the store, the kit or whatever, it's technically a ghost gun, sure, but, there's camera footage of you buying it. There's a receipt. There's paper trail. There's probably a credit card payment.
Not necessarily. If you bought an 80% lower from Defense Distributed, chance or from that California guy who was selling the 80% lowers, I don't think they were keeping a lot of records, and there was no requirement that they keep any.
Well, they're going to try to change that. Now, according to the White House's website press release, they say last year there were about 20,000 suspected ghost guns reported to the ATF as having been recovered by law enforcement in criminal investigations, which they claim is a tenfold increase from 2016.
Go America!
Yeah.
That's too bad.
The final rule that they've now put
too many of them.
They've put into place bans the manufacturing of the most accessible ghost guns, such as unserialized buy, build, shoot kits that individuals can buy online or at a store without a background check and can readily assemble into a working firearm in as little as 30 minutes with equipment they have at home. The rule clarifies.
Well, if they have experience building multiple of these things, they can probably put one together in 30 minutes. But
otherwise, it'll take hours, probably.
Yeah, I understand it. Even with these, you need to be very precise, and you need to have a tool that the average American doesn't have just laying around. I don't remember the exact specifics, but I think it's some sort of drill or something like that is needed.
Probably a few
what
things.
Defense Distributed was selling, as I recall, was a drill press that pretty much made drilling 3 very precise holes almost foolproof for the average person.
And they called that the Ghost Gunner. It's basically a computer-controlled device that assists you with building one of these things. So they say now that this new rule that they've just put out, so this isn't something that Congress did. This is just President Biden and the Justice Department, the ATF. Under the Gun Control Act, they say that now these kits qualify as, quote, firearms, unquote, and that commercial manufacturers of those kits must now become licensed and include serial numbers on the kit's frame or receiver, and commercial sellers of the kits must become federally licensed and run background checks prior to a sale, just like they have to do with other commercially made firearms.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in court, because the law hasn't changed. It sounds to me like Biden just started lying about what the law says. And not the first time, by the way, because back in the day, they said that anything past an 80% lower receiver of an AR-15 was supposed to be considered as a firearm, but there have been a lot of people getting off in court, apparently, because technically even 100% lower doesn't have enough parts to be considered a firearm, and the tide seems to be turning in court, especially now that a retired ATF agent has become a defense witness on that point.
Well, this may require a lawsuit to overturn then, if that's the case. So hopefully the gun community is going to be. I imagine they're very concerned with this.
He might just forget.
I don't think the ATF is going to forget this. And they're also going to require federally licensed dealers and gunsmiths that take in any unserialized firearm into inventory to serialize that weapon. So if somebody builds a gun at home and then sells it to a dealer, they then have to serialize that before selling it again. And I'm sure there's more.
Are crimes committed with ghost guns on the rise?
They say that they are. That's what they claim. Of course, they lie. So out of time for tonight. Join us tomorrow online in the meantime. We're at freetalklive.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
This is the Liberty Radio Network, broadcasting the latest liberty-oriented audio content 24 hours a day at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced a series of measures to crack down on so-called ghost guns, which are untraceable weapons used in an escalating number of shootings. At the White House on Monday, the president said his new common sense policy will help save lives and reduce crime. From Washington, D.C., Benji Heyer reports.
Ghost guns, made from kits that can be purchased online and assembled in minutes at home, lack a serial number, rendering them almost impossible to track. US President Joe Biden says that means they could fall into the hands of criminals, domestic abusers or terrorists, people who would normally be prevented from purchasing a gun at a store. His new rule isn't a ban, like those imposed by several states, but rather a change in how the federal government treats these kits.
The United States Department of Justice is making it illegal for a business to manufacture one of these kits without a serial number. Illegal for a licensed gun dealer to sell them without a background check.
Ghost guns have fueled the epidemic of violence in the US, having been used in multiple recent shootings.
The U.S. and Indian defense and foreign ministers say their relationship is only growing stronger despite the U.S.'s concerns about India's lack of support for its policy towards Russia. They have just wrapped up the 2+2 dialogue, an annual meeting set up in 2018, FSN's Kate Fisher reports.
These annual talks are focused on improving bilateral relations and cooperation in Asia. It's also seen as part of Washington's strategy to help India become a counterweight to China's influence in the region. But this year's talks have been overshadowed by India's neutrality over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. US Secretary of State Blinken urged countries to join the US in condemning Russia, but said that India must make its own decision.
As a general proposition, are consulting with all of our allies and partners on the consequences of Putin's war, the atrocities being committed against the people of Ukraine. In our judgment, it is important that all countries, especially those with leverage, press Putin to end the war.
U.S. markets tumbled in the final hours of trading amid fears rising interest rates will slow the U.S.